Hi, I'm Shakti Durga. Welcome to the Goddess Speaks podcast. This is a collection of discourses from the ancient goddess Artha, containing spiritual energy and activations and discussions of those discourses. I hope that the teachings are beneficial to you on your personal journey of enlightenment. The reading, if I had to summarise it, I would say it was mainly about the history of humanity, guardian angels, and belonging. So here we go. In the beginning, when the round of creation began, the divine sent forth sparks of its own essence to enter into a world of creativity of such beauty and magnitude that from the mind of the divine this was nothing short of a miraculous gift, and the parts of the divine consciousness that were given this opportunity became the souls of humans and other types of beings. So that's interesting, isn't it? From the one came the multiplicity, with every kind of being noted and taken care of by the divine and given its own stream of evolution and self-realization. The human family was sent the furthest from the divine, sent to the furthest so as to give the most opportunity for diversification and choice beyond that which most beings could ever concern themselves with. And yet for the human souls imprinted upon them from the very time of inception, as they brought forth the various different subtle aspects and bodies which were developed over eons, in them was a grain of having been separated from the main force field of the divine. So right from the beginning, as the subtle bodies are sent into world after world, loka after loka, in preparation finally for physicality, the sense of being cast out just becomes stronger and stronger until we become finally, as human beings, imbued with a sense of, am I supposed to be here? Where am I supposed to be? Is this where I belong? I yearn for something. I don't know what it is, but I don't have it. I yearn for connection that's not apparent to me, and I try and find it in all these different places. And yet, when I'm still, sometimes there's a sense of that loneliness, not being enough, a yearning for something I can't grasp, a sense of not belonging anywhere. So Artha said that at different times in the human evolution, this feeling becomes stronger or weaker, and at different lifetimes it's more or less prevalent, but every soul gets to feel this energy. And she also said that that feeling of having been cast out and alone is never present within the part of self that always remains one in the field of the infinite divine and the many different subtle parts of self. And the journeys we've done to find ourselves again, we must, of course, come across this seeming wound of incarnation. And she did say it's not just on the physical plane of earth that we've felt the self separate from and felt the grief of leaving something that was more unified to go to something less unified, but also upon other types of world upon which we've had lives. There's a sense of dissolution or destruction that creates a sense of loss as we then dive deeper towards the incarnations of the ultimate furthest expression from divine oneness, which is being a human, equipped with the types of things we recognize, like human bodies and minds, that we come to idolize and feel the lack of something intangible. And we feel that's a sort of a dizziness. And all of the habits about which we've studied so much to do with veiling your consciousness from that ache and the sorrow and the grief that is existentially present until we start really remembering and start the journey of return. Artha described the whole journey as cyclical, not a punishment, but an opportunity for vast creativity. And on the return journey, the dividends are paid by the divine, in that the souls who come back again as we're doing, do so with such a palette upon which to have their consciousness. They're not just floating in an endless sea, but instead are capable of contributing to the endless sea, not from a place of separateness, but from a place of arising in the moment of time-space. And with that arising, there would be the benefit. And that contribution naturally starts to become something around serving and giving, and arises from the knowledge of the experience of going into separateness and that existential pain that's very real, and it's felt by such souls as a natural welling up of a desire to help. So that desire to help is seen as part of the evidence that the journey of return is underway. And Arta said that from this stage of evolution, she's talking about being flung out to the furthest vibrational or dimensional recesses of the universe. She said from that stage of evolution comes the concept of the guardian angel. And the guardian angel is someone who's been in the human chain and then come through into the path of return, but they're further ahead on the path of return than we are. And that soul has come to its own evolution and is of the same chain of evolution, being human like we are. So there's many different chains of evolution, and plants have their chains of evolution. Different animals do. Some animals start animals and then become humans. There's that kind of evolutionary thing as well. And then there's also angels, and different angels have different evolutionary trajectories, and they don't come into the human world. They can kind of visit, but that's not their chain of evolution. Anyway, back to Arta. She said, this soul who's well ahead of where your soul is in the path of return is a guardian angel, basically. And in your own way, each of us already are a guardian angel to souls who are less evolved than we are on the journey of return. So each becomes a guardian angel and each is guarded. And she makes the point that this is happening beyond the mind. It's happening in the subtle bodies, which sometimes in those who are very sensitive, there can be a leakage from the life of the beloved to whom we're the guardian angel and a giver of inspiration. So there can be leakages sometimes of information from that Holy One, as she described it, which is a person you're guarding, and that can come in through into your conscious mind. It can come as a dream you don't understand that seems disconnected from your life, or memories that you sometimes seem to have, but perhaps they're not your memories, and that it's a complex matter to describe and to allow it to vest into your conscious mind. But she hoped that somehow, in the essence of your being, you would feel the subtlety of what she was talking about and that you'd start to become more interconnected as people. She gave a great analogy. You can think of a solitary bird, and that same bird when it's in flight and part of a group in flight, and in that formation of birds in the sky, there's always a leader. And then the leaders change when they tire and another one takes their place. And so she said, is that one bird or is that one flock of birds? Are we individuals or are we part of one harmonious whole? Are we a drop of water in an ocean or are we the ocean? She talked about how the human mind has to divide things up to understand them, but the intuition is capable of synthesis of these types of concepts. With humans, there is a fear of oneness. Isn't that interesting, the fear of oneness? I've experienced that at different times in my evolutionary journey, a feel of annihilation, a fear of being destroyed somehow. And I think that anyone on a spiritual path will have felt that, including a fear of God as well, or a feeling of wanting to stay separate, which is kind of a joke really, but I'm sure that many of you may have experienced that too at various times. She said, at the same time, there's a terrible ache from the feeling of being uncertain as to whether you belong. And these things find their resolution as your development unfolds further and further. And she was really clear that it won't be forever that you feel a sense of not belonging or a fear of whether or not you're enough. That these things are part of the journey and they accompany us for varying amounts of time and experience, because even those things play their part in our development. When we're in the middle of those experiences, we judge them and condemn ourselves, but this is a distortion. And her advice was, you should always call upon to yourself your guardian angel. And I've started to include that in most of the invocations that I do. I call on our guardian angels. For this is a person like you who is most likely one who's been through challenges such as the ones that you face. The ego would like there to be a certainty in the concept of the guardian angel. Who is it? What do they look like? What colour hair do they have? What colour eyes do they have? What are they wearing? Can I paint it? When were they on Earth? And Arta was pretty clear that this is a misunderstanding of the concept of the guardian angel, because that which guards us is not the terrestrial features, but is the essence of the soul of the one who's further along the chain of evolution than we are. Makes sense, doesn't it? So what does a soul look like? It looks like a geometry of light and sound. It's not going to have big ears and a pointy chin or anything else. Anyway, there are times when this guardian angel is your guru. There are times when it's someone unknown to you, that it would not be worth your while to even inquire about who it is, but to know that you're never left alone. And I loved that you're never left alone, because sometimes it can feel like you're alone, but you never are. The bringing about of the consciousness on the earth of the presence of Guru was given by the divine as a way to bring comfort to those whose minds were still very much in separateness, and in fact to everyone who shares the terrestrial experience. For those at the beginning of the journey, the presence of a group gave a sense of leadership and direction, a sense of being close to someone who was caring and who clearly embodied attributes that we felt were admirable. But then, as we go along the path, of course, like teenagers, we have the times of rebellion and we don't want to be led by anyone. And this is the state of the Western world presently, says Arta. I think we can relate to that, can't we? But the consciousness comes again to realize, the guru is worthwhile. Noting the guru is worth understanding and merging with, for this, in truth, is a form of guardian angel given by the divine to the souls who are seeking. It's not the only form of guardian angel, you have others. It's not a singularity, but a multiplicity. In part, these great ones can form around you as a being, but on the most part, as like a flock of birds being around you, it's a field in which you're held safe and strong. It is with much interest that you can search out those who've already the skills that you seek in your own life as you start to communicate with yourself more deeply and realize areas for potential growth and harmonization and balancing. And then you can send love to those who've already mastered what it is that you're seeking to learn, and that they'll send you their mastery if you're open to receive. So that was pretty nice. And then she said, the most useful avenue right now is for you to really understand that there is a guardian angel watching over you at all times, particularly for those whose wound of not belonging is strong. Know that you're quintessentially belonging, that this flock of birds, so to speak, is incomplete without you, and you are already helping birds behind you in the flock. You are already doing this, even though it's not within your conscious mind. The divine respects and utilizes and accepts all, because in truth, all is nothing but divine. There's nothing else. So that is a big one, isn't it? Tell that to the duality consciousness theologies, that everything's divine and there's nothing else. But the existential truths in their vastness can sometimes leave a little bit to be desired when we need the day-to-day wisdom of, and what next? It's all God, but that's not helpful when I'm facing this bizarre person doing crazy things that feels hurtful to me. So, says Arta, it's for that exquisite teachings are given, including from the Book of Arta and many other forms of teaching as well. Sometimes the human mind is more easily able to remember adversity than it is to remember bliss. When something that you perceive as negative happens, you remember that and you know something happened. When blissful consciousness happens, you tend to think of it as a meditative experience and dismiss it. Thus, there are times when processing is the very perfect medicine that helps you to know that you're in fact changing, evolving, and growing into the fullness from which you came. Oh my God, how true is that? And then the other thing is that when we start to process, our consciousness actually closes down into the lower levels. And that which we have already perceived and even lived in for days, weeks, or months at a time, we view it as a fantasy or completely forget it. It just goes poof out of your memory banks as though it never happened. And that's part of the design of human consciousness, that the upper echelons of consciousness are not available to those who are stuck in the lower levels. And being able to access the upper echelons of consciousness, particularly in a dark age, requires consistent work and will not happen by itself. It has to be daily spiritual practice and connection. Otherwise, you lose it. You know the old saying, use it or lose it. And in fact, one of the spiritual laws that governs our universe is the law of use, that if you don't use things, they're taken. They're not taken as a punishment. They just don't stick with you. And so the law of use says use your body, keep your body strong, use your intellect so you don't get soft in the head. Use your growing spiritual muscle, because if you don't, it will recede as well. Use your connection to your guardian angel, to Guru, and bring it closer. And the discipline and the strength for me is to do that when you're feeling like crap. That's the discipline and the strength, to call on it then, to lift you up. And quite often we just feel disinclined to do anything spiritual when we feel like that, don't we? All right, and so it was that Artha asked us that we review the materials taught, which is, I guess, why we're doing these reviews. May your lives be blessed. May your commitment to your spiritual development be enhanced and strengthened, and may you have appropriate attitude to those who lead you and guide you on the path, both known and unknown to you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Goddess Speaks. If so, please share it with your friends and your family so they can benefit too. If you'd like to connect with me, visit my website, shaktidurga.com.